For a few brief months, the African savanna can seem almost impossibly generous. Grass stretches across the plains in green waves. Seasonal rivers carry fresh water through valleys that only weeks earlier were dry. Herds of antelope spread across open country. Zebras graze beside wildebeest, and elephants move slowly between feeding grounds beneath a sky filled with towering clouds. At first glance, life appears secure, but in the savanna, abundance is temporary. The rains begin to weaken, storms become less frequent. Clouds disappear for days at a time. Then for weeks, the sun returns with relentless intensity. What begins as a subtle change soon transforms the entire landscape. Every hour, water evaporates from shallow pools. Moist soil hardens beneath the feet of thousands of animals. Grass loses its green color and begins to dry. Small streams shrink into isolated pools, separated by kilometers of dusty terrain. The dry season has begun. For the animals living here, this is not an unexpected disaster. Seasonal drought is part of the natural rhythm of many African ecosystems. Plants and animals have evolved extraordinary adaptations to survive these periods, but knowing that the dry season is coming does not make it easy. A herd of elephants moves across the plain. At the front walks an experienced matriarch. She is more than a leader. She is the memory of the family. Over decades, older elephants can accumulate knowledge about feeding grounds, migration corridors, and water sources. During difficult periods, that knowledge may influence whether an entire family finds the resources it needs. Behind her, younger elephants follow closely. They do not know where the journey ends. They simply follow. Elsewhere, zebras continue grazing, but every day the grass contains less moisture and gradually loses nutritional value. Wildebeest move across enormous territories, searching for better pastures. Giraffes turn increasingly toward leaves high above the ground, reaching vegetation unavailable to most grazing animals. Different species respond to the same crisis in different ways. Some travel, some wait, some conserve energy, and some begin watching everyone else. A lioness lies almost motionless beneath the shade of a tree. During the hottest hours, unnecessary movement wastes precious energy and water. Predators must also survive the dry season, and hunger alone does not guarantee a successful hunt. In fact, every decision carries a cost. A failed chase means energy lost. A long journey means dehydration. An injury can become far more serious when food is scarce. The drought does not create winners and losers immediately. It creates pressure day after day, week after week. That pressure begins to reshape animal behavior across the entire ecosystem. At one shrinking waterhole, species that normally maintain their distance are forced closer together. Impala approach cautiously, zebras wait nearby. A pair of warthogs kneel to drink, birds gather at the muddy edges. Then elephants arrive. The smaller animals move aside. In the dry season, water becomes more than a resource. It becomes the center of life, and sometimes the center of danger. Predators understand this. A waterhole is one of the few places where prey animals eventually have no choice but to appear. A thirsty animal can avoid danger for hours, perhaps even a day. But eventually, it must drink. Near the edge of the grass, something watches. The animals at the waterhole cannot see it clearly. They smell the air, heads rise, turn toward the sound of dry vegetation moving in the wind. For several seconds, nobody drinks. The entire waterhole seems frozen. Then a bird suddenly takes flight. The herd reacts instantly. Zebras step backward. Impala turn toward open ground. But nothing attacks. Not yet. The tension itself reveals one of the central realities of the dry season. Survival is no longer simply about finding food and water. It is about deciding when the need for those resources becomes greater than the danger of reaching them. And the season has only just begun. Far beyond the waterhole, the landscape continues changing. Mud cracks beneath the sun. Leaves fall from trees. Dust rises behind migrating herds. Somewhere beneath an ancient riverbed, water may still remain underground. Somewhere beyond the horizon, storms may still be falling. But no animal here can know exactly when the rains will return. And if they arrive late, the familiar dry season can become something far more dangerous. For millions of animals across the African savanna, the countdown has started. The water is disappearing, the food is losing its strength. Predators are becoming more patient, and soon, every creature on these plains will face the same unforgiving challenge: adapt or die. As the dry season deepens, the African savanna begins to contract, not physically, but biologically. The enormous landscape may still stretch beyond the horizon, yet for many animals, the world is becoming smaller every day. A waterhole that once covered a wide depression has shrunk to a muddy pool. A seasonal river has stopped flowing. Grasslands that supported thousands of herbivores now offer little more than dry stems and dust. And across the plains, animals begin moving toward the same places. Water at dawn, the first visitors arrive. Impala approach carefully, stopping every few steps to scan the surrounding grass. Zebras follow, forming loose groups near the shoreline. Warthogs lower themselves onto their front knees to reach the water. Birds crowd the muddy edges. Then something changes. The animals move aside. Elephants are coming. A herd emerges from the dust, led by an older female. For elephants, water is not optional. Adults require substantial amounts, particularly in hot conditions, and families may travel long distances between feeding and drinking areas. But elephants possess an extraordinary advantage. Experienced older individuals can remember landscapes over many years. They may recognize routes toward distant rivers, seasonal wetlands, and places where water has persisted during previous dry periods. This knowledge can become especially important when familiar water sources disappear. The matriarch reaches the edge of the pool. She drinks. The younger elephants follow, but the water is disappearing quickly. Within days, this place may no longer exist, so the herd moves again. Farther away, another elephant has stopped inside a dry riverbed. There is no visible water, only sand. The elephant scrapes at the ground with its feet. Then it begins digging with its trunk. The hole grows deeper. At first, nothing happens. Then the sand darkens. Moisture rises from below. Groundwater trapped beneath the riverbed slowly begins collecting inside the depression. The elephant drinks. Later, when the herd moves away, smaller animals may use the same excavation. In this way, elephants can sometimes become ecological engineers, altering their environment in ways that create opportunities for other species. But not every water source can be found. And not every animal has the strength to keep searching. As temperatures rise, the cost of travel increases. A zebra walking several kilometers between grazing grounds and water must spend energy simply to stay alive. For an animal already weakened by poor quality forage, every journey becomes more difficult. Predators understand this vulnerability. A lioness lies beneath an acacia near one of the remaining waterholes. She appears almost asleep, but her ears are moving, her eyes occasionally open. She is waiting. The dry season changes the relationship between predator and prey. When water is abundant, herbivores can spread across vast territories. When water disappears, their choices become limited. Eventually, almost every animal in the area must approach the same few places. And predators know where those places are, yet the advantage is not absolute. The open ground around a shrinking waterhole can also make predators easier to detect. A hunting lion must approach carefully. One mistake, one sudden movement, and dozens of animals may sound the alarm. Hunger does not eliminate the need for patience. Across the pool, a zebra lowers its head. It drinks quickly, then raises its head, listens, drinks again. Every few seconds, it checks the grass. This rhythm is not accidental. For prey animals, drinking creates vulnerability. Lowering the head can reduce the ability to detect danger immediately, so survival becomes a sequence of calculations. Drink, watch, listen. Drink again. Suddenly, an impala gives an alarm call. Heeds rise across the waterhole. The zebras turn, birds explode into the air. For a moment, the entire gathering becomes chaos. A lioness emerges from the grass. She accelerates. Dust erupts beneath her paws. The herd scatters across the plain. But the attack does not guarantee success. Most predator pursuits fail. Within seconds, the distance between hunter and prey grows. The lioness slows, the zebras continue running. And, soon, the savanna becomes quiet again. For now, because the animals will return. They have no choice. The waterhole is shrinking, the grass is dying, and every day, more animals arrive from surrounding territories. Elephants, buffalo, zebras, antelope eat predators, scavengers. Species that would normally remain separated are being drawn toward the same disappearing resource. And beneath the burning African sun, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. When water becomes scarce, survival is no longer simply about finding it, it is about reaching it before everyone else. And leaving alive. By the middle of the dry season, the savanna appears exhausted. The great herds attract attention because they are impossible to ignore. Elephants cross the horizon in clouds of dust. Zebras gather around shrinking pools. Buffalo move in dense groups, conserving strength as they search for grass and water. But beneath this vast struggle, another world is surviving almost unnoticed. A world of smaller creatures. And some of them possess adaptations far more surprising than size or strength. At midday, when temperatures become extreme, much of the savanna seems strangely silent. Many animals disappear. Rodents retreat underground. Reptiles seek shelter from direct sunlight. Insects reduce their activity. Small mammals that would quickly overheat in the open remain hidden inside burrows where temperatures are more stable. For these creatures, survival depends not on confronting the heat, but on avoiding it. The dry season changes time itself. Some animals become more active during the cooler hours of dawn, dusk, or night. When darkness falls, the apparently empty plains awaken. Porcupines emerge from shelter. Genets move quietly through vegetation. Hyenas begin traveling across enormous territories. Lions rise after spending much of the day conserving energy. Under the stars, the savanna becomes a different ecosystem. But animals are not the only organisms waiting for better conditions. The plants are waiting too. Across the landscape, the grass looks dead. Its blades have turned yellow and brittle. Many plants have stopped growing above ground, yet beneath the soil, roots and seeds remain alive. Dormancy is one of the savanna's great survival strategies. Instead of wasting energy during conditions unsuitable for growth, many plants reduce their activity and wait for moisture to return. Some trees survive through different tactics. Deep root systems allow certain species to reach water unavailable to shallow-rooted plants. Others lose leaves during dry periods, reducing the amount of moisture escaping into the atmosphere. What appears lifeless may simply be conserving resources. That principle is repeated everywhere. Move less, use less, wait longer, but large herbivores cannot disappear underground. They must continue searching. A herd of wildebeest begins moving across the plain. Zebras travel nearby. Their destination is not marked on any map. They follow environmental signals, rainfall patterns, vegetation growth, the smell of moisture, and routes shaped by generations of movement. In parts of East Africa, seasonal migrations involving wildebeest, zebras, and other herbivores create some of the most spectacular wildlife movements on Earth. But migration is not simply a majestic spectacle, it is a gamble. Every kilometer consumes energy. Young animals must keep pace. Weakened adults cannot afford unnecessary detours, and there is no guarantee that the grass ahead will still be green when they arrive. Behind the moving herds, predators follow opportunities. Hyenas can travel long distances while searching for food. Lions may adjust their territories and hunting behavior as prey populations shift. Vultures patrol the sky, using rising columns of warm air to travel efficiently while searching enormous areas below. Nothing in the dry season is wasted. Even death plays an ecological role. Scavengers recycle nutrients. Insects break down organic material. Microorganisms return elements to the soil. The savanna survives because countless organisms perform functions that are almost invisible from a distance. Then, near the edge of a dry riverbed, something unusual happens. A family of elephants stops. There is no river anymore, no visible pool, only pale sand stretching between the banks. The younger elephants hesitate, but the matriarch walks forward. She lowers her trunk. She smells the ground. Then she begins digging. Her feet push sand aside. Her trunk clears the depression. Minutes pass. The hole deepens. Nothing appears. Still, she continues. The others wait. Then the color of the sand begins to change. Darkness spreads through the bottom of the hole. Moisture high beneath the dry riverbed. Water remains trapped underground. Slowly, it begins to collect. The matriarch drinks first. The family gathers around her. And once again, survival depends on something more valuable than physical power. Mere knowledge accumulated across decades has led the herd to something the younger animals could never have found alone. Later, after the elephants leave, birds and smaller mammals approach the excavation. A resource uncovered by one species becomes an opportunity for many others. But elsewhere, conditions continue deteriorating. Another waterhole disappears. Another grazing area is abandoned. Another herd turns toward the horizon. The savanna is revealing its most important lesson. Survival does not always belong to the strongest predator or the largest animal. Sometimes it belongs to the creature that hides beneath the ground. Sometimes to the plant that waits as a seed. Sometimes to the herd willing to travel hundreds of kilometers, and sometimes to an old elephant that remembers where water flowed many years ago. Because during the harshest months, strength alone is not enough. The real advantage is knowing when to move, when to wait, and when to change. Months have passed. The savanna is almost unrecognizable. The green plains of the rainy season have vanished beneath a landscape of dust, brittle grass, and exposed earth. Seasonal streams have disappeared. Shallow lakes have retreated into patches of dark mud. Trees stand beneath the relentless sun, many carrying only a fraction of the leaves they once held. For the animals that remain, every day is now a test. There is still food, there is still water, but there is no longer enough of either to waste. A herd of buffalo moves slowly toward one of the last permanent pools. Their bodies are powerful, but strength has a cost. Large animals require enormous quantities of food and water, and as the landscape dries, maintaining such bodies becomes increasingly difficult. Nearby, zebras search through exhausted grasslands. Their digestive systems allow them to process relatively coarse vegetation, giving them an advantage when higher quality grasses disappear. But even this advantage has limits. Eventually, there must be something left to eat. Giraffes face a different challenge. They can reach leaves far above the grazing line and browse vegetation unavailable to animals feeding at ground level. Yet as trees respond to prolonged water stress, even these elevated food sources become less abundant. Every species has an adaptation. Every adaptation has a boundary. And now the savanna is approaching those boundaries. Predators are changing too. A pride of lions rests beneath the shrinking shadow of an acacia. They have spent most of the day almost motionless. This is not laziness. It is energy management. Hunting is expensive. A lion cannot afford to chase every animal it sees. During difficult periods, choosing the wrong target may mean wasting energy that cannot easily be replaced. So the pride waits. Weakness becomes information, a buffalo falling behind its herd, an antelope moving more slowly than the others, a zebra forced to travel farther from the safety of its group, Predators notice these differences, but the dry season is not simply a period of abundance for hunters. Predators need water too. Their prey may become concentrated, but competition between carnivores also intensifies. Hyenas travel through the darkness, using endurance and cooperation to search large territories. African wild dogs rely on coordination among pack members, but prolonged heat can limit the hours available for pursuit. Leopards often survive through flexibility. They can hunt a broad range of prey, operate largely alone, and use trees and dense vegetation as refuges where suitable habitat exists. Different predator, different strategies, the same crisis. As the drought continues, encounters between species become increasingly concentrated around the few remaining productive areas. At one waterhole, elephants arrive shortly before sunset. Buffalo are already there. Zebras wait farther back. Impala gather near the edges. The atmosphere changes immediately. No animal wants to leave, but none can ignore the presence of the others. Then, beneath the surface, another predator waits. A crocodile lies almost completely hidden. Only its eyes and nostrils remain visible. For animals approaching the water, danger can now come from two directions, from the grass and from the water itself. A young antelope steps forward. It drinks quickly. Nothing happens. Another approaches. Still nothing. The crocodile remains motionless. Patience is one of the most powerful weapons in the natural world. But not every confrontation ends in an attack. Animals constantly evaluate risk, and predators constantly evaluate cost. A failed attempt can be expensive for both. Survival favors restraint as often as aggression. Then the wind shifts. Something new travels through the air. The elephants react first. Several lift their trunks. They remain still, far beyond the horizon, invisible from the waterhole. Clouds are forming. Elephants possess an extraordinary ability to detect environmental information across great distances through smell, sound, and possibly low-frequency vibrations associated with storms and other elephants. The herd becomes restless. The matriarch begins walking. One by one, the others follow, but the sky above them is still clear. There is no rain here. Not yet. Over the following days, clouds appear on distant horizons and vanish again. Thunder may be heard without a single drop reaching the ground. For animals already living near the limits of endurance, false promises can be costly. Move too early toward distant rainfall, and they may waste precious energy. Wait too long, and the remaining water may disappear. This is the final challenge of the dry season. Not simply surviving scarcity, but predicting change. Across the plains, animals make decisions without knowing the future. Some remain, others migrate. Predators follow. Birds alter their routes. Elephants search ancient pathways preserved in memory. And then, one afternoon, the horizon darkens. A wall of clouds rises above the savanna. Wind sweeps across the plain. Dust spirals into the air. The temperature begins to fall. For the first time in months, the smell of rain crosses the dry earth. Animals raise their heads. But the drought is not over. The most dangerous moment may be happening right now, because until the first drops actually reach the ground, the savanna remains trapped between two worlds. The season that has almost destroyed its abundance, and the storm that could bring everything back to life. The sky has been dark for hours. Across the savanna, wind bends the dry grass and drives clouds of dust across the plains. In the distance, lightning flashes behind a wall of black clouds. For months, the land has waited for this moment. Elephants stop and lift their trunks. Zebras become restless. Antelope gather together. Birds cross the sky toward places that, only days earlier, seemed completely abandoned. Then the first drop falls. It strikes the dust and disappears. Another follows. Then another. Within seconds, thousands of drops begin striking the hardened ground. The sound grows louder. Rain. For the animals that have endured months of scarcity, it is the beginning of a transformation. But the recovery is not immediate. The earth has become so dry that the first rainfall can run rapidly across its surface. In some places, water collects in shallow depressions. In others, temporary streams suddenly return to life. Dry riverbeds begin to carry water again. Pools expand. Mud replaces dust. For elephants, change means that journeys between drinking sites may become shorter. For herbivores, something even more important is about to happen. The grass begins to return. At first, the transformation is almost invisible. Moisture penetrates the upper layers of soil. Dormant seeds absorb water. Roots that survived beneath the ground become active again. Then small green shoots appear among the yellow stems. Within days, patches of fresh vegetation begin spreading across the plains. For grazing animals, these young plants can provide food richer in moisture and nutrients than the dry vegetation of the previous months. Zebras find new grazing areas. Wildebeest begin adjusting their movements. Antelope spread away from the crowded waterholes. The landscape that forced animals together now begins separating them again. And that changes everything. Predators must adapt once more. During the harshest phase of the dry season, prey may have been concentrated around limited water sources. Now the herds can disperse. Lions must follow them. Hyenas travel into newly productive areas. African wild dogs may range widely as herbivores redistribute across the landscape. The advantage created by drought begins to disappear, but this is not a defeat for predators. It is simply another transition. The savanna is built on change. Above the plains, insects begin appearing in enormous numbers. Some species have waded through the dry period as eggs, larvae, or dormant adults. Moisture activates another hidden world. Termites emerge. Beetles become active. Flying insects fill the evening air for birds, reptiles, and small mammals. The return of insects creates a sudden abundance of food. Then come the frogs, temporary pools that seemed impossible only days earlier fill with calls after sunset. Species capable of surviving long dry periods emerge to reproduce rapidly while water remains available. Life responds almost immediately. But perhaps the most dramatic transformation happens beneath the animals' feet. The plains begin turning green. What looked dead was never truly empty. Seeds were waiting, roots were waiting, insects were waiting. Entire biological systems had reduced their activity, conserving energy until the environment changed. The dry season had not erased life, it had hidden it. A herd of elephants crosses one of the newly wet plains. The youngest animals play in shallow water. Adults feed on vegetation beginning to recover. The old matriarch still leads them. Months earlier, her knowledge helped guide the family toward distant water. Now that same landscape offers abundance again. Her experience will eventually pass, at least partly, through the behavior of younger elephants that followed her journeys. The memory of drought becomes part of the next generation. Elsewhere, a zebra foal remains close to its mother. A giraffe feeds beneath a tree producing new leaves. Birds gather around fresh pools. And across the horizon, herds move toward newly green pastures. The crisis seems to be ending, yet there is something important about the dry season that should not be forgotten. It is not merely an enemy of the savanna. Seasonal dryness helps shape these ecosystems. It influences migration. It changes competition. It affects vegetation. It determines where animals gather and where they travel. It rewards flexibility and exposes vulnerability. And when unusually severe or prolonged drought occurs, those pressures become even greater. In this landscape, survival has never meant defeating nature. It means responding to it. The elephant survives through memory and cooperation. The zebra survives through movement and efficient use of coarse grasses. The lion survives through patience and energy conservation. Plants survive through deep roots, reduced growth, or dormancy. Small animals survive by hiding from the most extreme conditions. There is no single strategy, because there is no single way to survive. The camera rises above the plains. Below, the first great patches of green stretch across the wet earth. Elephants move beside a river. Zebras scatter across new grazing grounds. Storm clouds continue moving across the horizon. Soon abundance will return, and eventually it will disappear again. The cycle will repeat: rain growth, scarcity, migration, survival, gelization after generation. Because on the African savanna, nature offers no permanent guarantees, only change, and every living thing must answer that change in its own way. Here, survival does not always belong to the largest, the fastest, or the strongest. It belongs to those capable of doing what life on this extraordinary continent has demanded for millions of years. Adapt or die. The African savanna is a world built on extremes. Rain can create abundance in a matter of days, while drought can transform the same landscape into a test of endurance. Yet life continues, not because survival is easy, but because every species has learned, in its own way, how to respond to change. From the memory of elephants to the patience of predators, from migrating herds to seeds waiting beneath the soil, the dry season reveals one of nature's oldest truths: survival belongs to those who can adapt. If you enjoyed this documentary, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories about wildlife, survival, and the incredible forces that shape our planet. And tell us in the comments, which animal do you think is best adapted to survive the African dry season? Until the next documentary.